Chapter 6 The Tunnels "If the city keeps moving," Catherine asked, "how can you take me to the location of the murder?" "Triangulation," Eve the witness said. "Using the compass tower as one point and the exact position of the sun at a given time as another point, my senses are able to triangulate the position where I first witnessed the body. The time is the only real factor at this point. We must gauge the sun in exactly 13.24 decades to get the position right." They were walking through the city, Catherine feeling a mixture of fear and exuberance at her first solo trip outside. They were walking high up, above many of the buildings, bridges between structures seemingly growing for her to walk across, then melting away after her passage. Eve apparently needed the height in order to take precise measurements. Catherine was angry at Derek for his lack of interest in their predicament, but she knew him well enough to know how stubborn he could be. She, in fact, knew him far better than he knew himself, and that was maddening. They were caught in a web of intrigue that existed on a massive level, and as long as she was trapped there she had to play the situation with as much control as she could muster, and that included not telling Derek any more about his life than he could figure out for himself. Her own existence was at stake, and until she could escape the maze that had locked up their activities, she desperately feared saying anything more. She had to get away from Robot City. The pain had increased since her arrival here, and for the first time in her life, death was a topic she found herself dwelling upon, and her only crime was love. She felt the tears begin to well up and fought them back with an iron will. They wouldn't help her here. Nothing would, except her own tenacity and intelligence. "Tell me about your involvement in David's death," she asked Eve, who was busy calibrating against the sun. "In approximately 2 decades," the robot said, "it will have happened exactly 9 days ago. We will go down from here." Eve moved directly to the corner of the 6-story structure they were standing upon, and railed stairs formed for them to walk down. As they descended, the robot continued talking. "I was called upon to witness the attempts to free friend David from an enclosed room." "An enclosed room?" Catherine said. "I never heard about this. How could he get trapped like that in this place?" "The room grew around him," Eve said. They reached the street level, and the robot headed west away from the compass tower. "It sealed him in and wouldn't let him leave." "Why?" "I do not know." "Does anyone know?" "I do not know." "All right," Catherine said, watching a team of robots carry what looked to be gymnasium equipment into one of the buildings. "Just report what you saw." "Gladly. I was called upon to witness the attempt to free friend David from the sealed room. When I arrived, Supervisor Dante was already on the scene." The robot stopped moving and for several seconds stared up into the sun. "Precisely here." Eve pointed to a section of the street. "Friend David was caught inside the structure and we could hear him shouting to be let out." "Who?" "Myself, Supervisor Dante, a utility robot with a torch, and another household utility robot who first discovered friend David's problem." "What happened then?" "Then Supervisor Dante asked utility robot number 237-5 if the laser torch was safe to use in such close proximity to a human being, and utility robot number 237-5 assured him that it was. At that point Supervisor Dante tried to reason with the room to release friend David, and, failing that, he requested that the room be cut into with the torch." "And that request was complied with?" "Yes. Supervisor Dante, in fact, asked utility robot number 237-5 to complete the project quickly." "Why?" "I do not know." Catherine thought about the nature of the witness and asked another question. "Were there any other events that coincided with this event?" "Yes," Eve said. "Food Services complained that friend David could not be served lunch on time, and inquired if it would be dangerous to his health. Several of the supervisors were meeting in the compass tower to discuss ways in which friend Derek may have come to the city without their knowledge, and the city itself was put on general security alert." "Does a general security alert alter the way in which functions are performed?" she asked. "Yes. We were all called to other emergency duties, and were here only because of the danger to friend Derek and the need to release him." "Which you did." Not me, Eve said. I only witness. But friend David was freed from the enclosed room. Did you notice anything odd at that point? Odd? Friend Catherine, I can only— I know, she interrupted, a touch frustrated. You only witness. Then tell me exactly what happened. Supervisor Dante asked friend David to return to his apartment because a security alert had been called. Friend David said that he was not ready to return to his apartment, that he had business to do. Then he complained of a headache. Then he started laughing and walked away. Utility Robot number 237-5 then asked Supervisor Dante if friend David should be apprehended, and Supervisor Dante said he had weighed the priorities and decided that the security alert took precedence, and ordered us to proceed to our emergency duties, which in my case involved witnessing something that I am not at liberty to discuss with you. Then what? Catherine asked, anxious. Then I performed the security duty that I had been assigned. No, no, Catherine said. What happened in regard to David? Approximately 9 decades later I was again called upon. Eve began moving quickly down the street, Catherine right behind, having to run to keep up. I am taking you to the approximate place of the second incident, the robot called from a speaker set in the back of its dome. I was called here, along with Supervisor Euler this time, by Utility Robot number 716-14, who had discovered several waste control robots trying to take the body of friend David away. Eve moved quickly around a corner, then stopped abruptly, Catherine nearly running into the robot. Here, Eve said, is the approximate place where the body was alleged to have fallen. Alleged? It was no longer here upon my arrival. What story did the utility robot tell? Utility robot number 716-14 said that he sent the waste control robots away, then examined friend David for signs of life without success. During the course of the examination, another room began to grow around the body and close it, at which point utility robot number 716-14 removed himself before becoming trapped and put in an emergency call to us. We returned to the scene together, but the body was gone. That is the last time anyone has seen friend Derek. Were there signs of violence upon the body? Utility Robot number 716-14 reported that the body appeared perfectly normal except for a small cut on the left foot. Since I can only report hearsay in this regard, I am unable to render this as an accurate examination. Catherine leaned against the wall of a one-story parts depot, the wall giving slightly under her pressure. It seemed more than coincidence that David's plight in the sealed room and the alert conditions of the city happened concurrently. But how are they connected? Do you feel, then, that the body moved simply because the city moved it? She asked. I cannot speculate on such a theory, the witness said, but I heard Supervisor Euler make a pronouncement similar to yours. Hearsay again. Given the growth rate of the city, Catherine said, calculate how far and in which direction the body of David could have traveled, if, indeed, the movement of the city took him from his place. Approximately 10.5 blocks, Eve said, without any hesitation, in any direction. The city works according to a plan that is not known to me. 10.5 blocks, Catherine said low. What'll sure give me something to do to fill in the time. She looked at Eve's bristling dome. Let's take a walk. That is your decision, the robot replied, as Catherine picked a direction at random and began walking, looking for what she didn't know. Access denied was written in bold letters across the CRT, and it was a phrase Derek had run into over a dozen times in as many minutes. He stood at a small counter set beside a large open window. Through the billowing clouds of iron-red dust floating into the sky, he could see the long line of earth movers inching their way along the rocky ground, the teeth of their heavy front diggers easily chewing up the ground to a depth of 70 centimeters, then laying out the mulch in a flat, even plain behind, holes filling, rises falling, the ground absolutely uniform behind. A series of heavy rollers completed the unique vehicles, packing the ground hard for the slab base of the city to push its way into that section as it was completed. After leaving the reservoir and its tragedy behind, he had asked Rek to take him to the edge of the city. He had wanted to see for himself the creation of the cloud dust and also to try and find access to a terminal far out of reach of the supervisors. The robots had been hesitant at first, but after Derek had assured him that he'd go no farther than the city's edge, Rek had readily agreed. But now that he was here, Derek resented the time it had taken to come this far out. The terminal had been a complete bust. He found himself able to access any amount of information when it came to this part of the city operation. Mm, operation. Troubleshooting info, repair info, time references, equipment specs, personal delineation, and SOPs of all kinds. But beyond that, access was impossible. He had tried various methods of obtaining passwords, but it seemed he was stymied before he got started. He came away with the impression that once the city was on alert, terminals became place-orientated, only able to pick up specific data as it related to their possible function in a given location. He found this difficult to believe, for if the robots were in total charge of access and passwords, it belied the nature of their perfect human world. It struck him that access ought to be humanly possible for very basic philosophical reasons, but not here, not at this terminal. So where did that leave him? The rain still came with or without his presence, the central core was still denied to him, and of any answers it might possess. He was still a prisoner, a fact he did take seriously despite Catherine's feelings, and he still knew nothing about his origins or reasons for being in Robot City. That thought returned him to the basics. When he had visited the compass tower, Avernus had been pointed out as the first supervisor robot, the one that had initially construction of the other supervisors. Derek had been successful in determining the origin and destination of the water. Now he would work on the origin of the city itself. The only place to start was with Avernus in the underground. The mining was needed to produce the raw materials to build the city. Everything else sprang from that foundation. He would go to the source, to Avernus. He shut down the useless terminal and walked out of the otherwise bare room to find Rek intently studying the rising dust clouds, taking readings. It was his obsession. "I want to go into the mines and speak with Avernus," he told the robot. "Is that acceptable?" "I will take you to the mines, friend Derek," Rek answered, "but from that point on, the decision will belong to Avernus." "Fair enough," Derek said, and prepared for another long walk. Then he spotted one of the trams parked near the evacuation and walked toward it. "Let's ride this time." "We were not given this machine," Rek said. "It is not ours to take." "Were you told not to let me take the machine?" Derek countered. "No, but then let's go." Derek jumped in the front but saw no controls with which to drive it. He knew this was probably the means by which the robots worked the movers got here, but the witness was unable to make that speculation and consequently folded up. "How does it work?" "You speak your destination into the microphone," Rek said. "The underground," Derek said, then shrugged at Rek. Within seconds the car lurched forward and moved speedily away from the digs. They traveled quickly, moving through an entire section full of nothing but robot production facilities, and that were running full tilt, fiercely trying to keep up with the record-setting building pace. As the number of buildings increased, so too did the number of robots that serviced those buildings, and the people who didn't live in them. They passed vehicle after vehicle jammed full of new, functionally designed robots who stared all around, seeing their world for the first time. They also passed other small forests and what seemed to be large sections of hydroponic greenhouses, for when large-scale food production became a reality. Then they whizzed past a large open area that seemed to serve no function. "What's that?" Derek asked. "Nothing," Derek answered. "I don't mean now," Derek said. "What's it going to be?" "I do not often deal in potential," the robot replied, several red lights in his dome blinking madly, "but I recall Supervisor Euler once referring to this place as a future spaceport." Derek was a bit taken aback. Robot City was absolutely unable to deal with incoming or outgoing ships in any form. It led him down another avenue. "If the spaceport hasn't been constructed yet," he said, "where do you keep your hyperwave transmitters?" He asked the question casually, knowing full well that Rek would undoubtedly tell him the information was classified, but he was totally unprepared for the answer he received. I do not know what a hyperwave transmitter is, the robot replied. A device designed for communication over long distances in space, Derek said. Perhaps you call it something else. I have witnessed nothing designed to communicate beyond our atmosphere, Rek answered. You don't send and receive information from off planet? I know of no such instance, Rek replied. We are self-contained here. The tram jerked to a stop, jerking Derek's thoughts along with it. Somehow it had never occurred to him that they really were trapped on this planet. The key and its proper use suddenly became of paramount importance to him. We have arrived, friend Derek, Rex said. So we have, Derek replied, slowly getting out of the car. What was going on here? Who created this place? And why? It was a pristine civilization removed from contact with anything beyond itself, yet its spacer robots were obvious. Could Derek, the dead man, have been the creator? He walked past the lines of robots carrying their damaged equipment, past the huge extruder and its never-ending ribbon of city, and stood at the entrance to the underground. He turned to see Rex standing beside him. "Find Avernus," he said. "Tell him I want to speak with him. I don't want to break protocol by going somewhere off limits to humans." "Yes, friend Derek," the robot answered, and moved aside to commune with its net of radio communications. Derek sat on the ground beside the doorway and watched the robots walking back and forth past him. He was beginning to feel like a useless appendage with nothing to do. He felt guilty even ordering the robots around. They had more important things to do. He glanced at his watch. It was 2 in the afternoon, and soon they'd be approaching another night of rain. Another useless night of speculation as the water level rose higher and higher. "We have failed," Euler had said, and in that sentence the robot had spoken volumes. Like Derek, the supervisor knew that Robot City was a test designed for all of them. If Euler and the others were unable to solve the problem of the rain, they would have failed in their attempt to build a workable world. He also knew that the salvation of this world would take a creative form of thought that most people felt robots incapable of. Perhaps that's where Derek fit in. Synonetics, they had called it, the whole greater than the sum of its parts. For that to take place, Derek would have to begin by convincing the robots they had to confide in him, despite their security measures. "I'm extremely busy, friend Derek," the voice said loudly. "What do you want of me?" Derek looked up to see Avernus's massive form bending to fit in the door space. "We need to speak of saving this place," Derek said. "We need to approach one another as equals, and not as adversaries." "You may have done murder, Derek," Avernus said. "I am not the equal of that." "Neither is Euler," Derek replied, "but his inattention caused a robot to die today. You were also present." Derek looked at the ground. "Yes," he said. "I had no right to bring that up." "Tell me what you want of me." "Answers," Derek said. "Understanding. I want to help with the city, the rains. I want someone to know and appreciate that." The robot looked at him for a long moment, then motioned him inside. They walked down the stairs together and into the holding area. Rek followed behind at a respectable distance. Avernus then took him aside away from the activity, and made a seat for him by piling up a number of broken machines of various kinds. Derek climbed atop the junk pile and sat, Avernus standing nearby. "We are in an emergency situation. My programming limits my communication with you." "I understand that," Derek replied. "I also know that many situations require judgment calls that you must shift through your logical circuits. I only ask that you think synetically." "If you ask that of me," the robot said, "I must tell you something. The concept of death holds more weight with me than with others. My logic circuits are different because of my work." "I don't understand." "The robot's stock in trade is efficiency," Avernus answered, "and in jobs requiring labor, cost efficiency. And in mines, cost efficiency isn't necessarily cost efficient." Now I'm really confused. "The most cost-effective way to approach mine work may be the most dangerous way to approach it, but the most dangerous way to approach it may result in the loss of a great many workers because of the nature of the mines. So the most effective way to work in the mines may not be the most cost-efficient in the long run. Consequently, I am programmed to have a respect for life, even robot life, that far and away exceeds what one could consider normal. The lives of my workers are of prime importance to me beyond any concept of efficiency." What has that got to do with me? Derek asked. If you have killed, Derek, you'll be anathema to me. The fact that you are accused and could be capable of such an action is almost more than I can bear. I voted against your freedom when we met on this issue. I swear to you that I'm innocent, Derek said. Humans lie, the robot answered. Now do you still wish me to be the one to appreciate your position? Yes, Derek answered firmly. I ask only that I be given the opportunity to show you that I have the best interests of Robot City at heart. I am innocent and the truth will free me. Well said. What do you want to know? You are the first supervisor, Derek said. What are your first recollections? I was awakened by a utility robot we call 1-1, Avernus said, his red photocells fixed on Derek. 1-1 had already awakened 50 other utility machines. I was wakened with full knowledge of who and what I was, a semi-autonomous robot whose function was to supervise the mines for city building and to supervise the building of other supervisors to fulfill various tasks. Were you programmed to serve humans? No, Avernus said quickly. We are programmed with human information, both within us and within the core unit, which was also operational when I was awakened. Our decision to service was one we arrived at independently. Could that be the reason the robots here have been less enthusiastic about Catherine and me? Derek asked. Not knowing human reality, you accepted an idea that was impossible for us to live up to. That is, perhaps, true, Avernus agreed. How long ago did your awakening take place? A year ago, give or take. Did you see any human beings, or have knowledge of any at that time? No. Our first action was the construction of the compass tower. After that we began our philosophical deliberations as to our purpose in the universe. How about 1-1? Did he have any contact with humans? It never occurred to us to ask, Avernus said. Where is 1-1 now? Derek asked, feeling himself working toward something. In the tunnels, Avernus said, gesturing toward the elevators. 1-1 works the mines. Derek jumped off the makeshift seat. Take me there, he said. Security, the robot began. I'm a human being, Derek said. This world was designed for me and my kind. I'm sorry, Avernus, but if you exist to serve, it's time you started to act like it. If you respect your own philosophies, you must accept the fact that your security measures were not designed to keep you secure from human beings. If they were, there is something desperately wrong with your basic philosophy. It is dangerous in the mines, Avernus replied. You can protect me. The robot stood looking between Derek and the elevator doors. I must deny you the central core, he said at length. I must deny you knowledge of our emergency measures. But you are a human and this is your world to share with us. I will take you to 1-1 and protect you. If, at some point, protecting you means sending you back to the surface, I will do that. Fair enough, Derek said, looking at his watch. We must go. They moved toward the elevators, Rek joining them within the large car. In deference to the supervisor, the other robots let them have the car to themselves. Avernus pushed a stud in the wall and the door closed. The car started downward. It went down a long way. The trick to movement in the mines is deliberation, Avernus said as the car shuddered to a stop. Deliberation, Derek repeated. The door slid open to delirious activity. Thousands of utility robots moved through a huge cavern that stretched as far as Derek could see in either direction. The continuous line of train cars rolled past on movable tracks, delivering raw ore to the giant smelters that refined it to more workable stages, where it was heated and alloyed with other materials. The ceiling was 35 meters high and cut from the raw earth. Clean rooms filled the space at regular intervals. Iron! Avernus said, stretching his arms wide. The foundation upon which the rarest metals are based, from which the modern world is made possible. We mine it in huge quantities, using it in its raw state to make our equipment and alloy it with special plastics to form our city. There, he pointed to a machine through which layers of iron were belt feeding together with imprinted patterns of microcircuits. The congealed mass issued from the top of the machine and proceeded through the ceiling in a continuous ribbon, the building material that Derek had seen extruding on the surface. That is the stuff of Robot City, Avernus said. Iron and plastic alloy. cut with large amounts of carbon and using carbon monoxide as a reducing agent. The skin is then imprinted with millions of microcircuits per square meter in centimeter-independent sections. The skin is alive with robot intelligence, geared to human needs and protection. The whole is pre-programmed to build and behave in a prescribed fashion, and to react to human needs as they arise. That is why the walls give when they push on them, Derek said, moving gingerly out of the elevators and staying close to Avernus. Exactly. Now remember, deliberation. Stay close. Avernus moved out into the middle of the furious activity, machines and robots and train cars rushing quickly all around them. As Avernus stepped into the path of onrushing vehicles, Derek froze, wanting to pull back. But the expected accidents never took place, the robots and their machines gauging all the actions around them and reacting perfectly to them. That's when the concept of deliberation became clear to Derek. Movement needed to be deliberate, with constant forward momentum. All judgment was based on the idea that movement would be steady and could be avoided once gauged. It was the erratic movement that was dangerous. The abrupt stop, the jump back, down here, such movements would be fatal. Once he understood the concept, it became easier to walk into the path of onrushing vehicles. As they moved through the center of the great hall, Derek began to feel more comfortable. "Let me ask you a question," he said to the big robot. "Did you invent the skin of Robot City?" "No," Avernus replied. "Its program was already within the central core." "So its activities are all pre-programmed?" "Correct. All we did was use it once we decided to be of service to humanity." They reached an edge of the hall, dozens of smaller tunnels branching off from it. "We ride now," Avernus said, climbing into a cart that was far too small for his immense bulk. Derek and Rek climbed in with him, and Avernus started off right away, taking him down a barely lit tunnel. "This one looks deserted," Derek said, and they hurried along at a fast clip. "It was until 2 days ago," Avernus said. "It is now, perhaps, going to save us." "How?" "You will see." They rode for several more minutes through the dark, going deeper into the earth. Then Derek heard activity ahead. "We are approaching," Avernus said. "Approaching what?" Derek asked. Avernus turned a corner, and they were suddenly confronted by a widening of the tunnel. Several hundred robots working furiously within an ever-growing space, scooping out dirt into any available container or skid, anything that would move Earth. They then would take the Earth and move it quickly with it down adjoining tunnels, refilling that which had been excavated some time previously. Like an ant farm, they moved in graceful cooperation and determination, and standing atop a cart looming above them was Rydberg, silently pointing as he transmitted his orders by radio to the toiling robots. Avernus turned and looked at Derek. "Somewhere in there," he said, "you will find 1-1. And thus ends Chapter 6.